Yeah, I wanted to obviously thank Mr. Jacobs' family, Donnie and Cam, again for continuing this opportunity. I started a few years ago. Obviously, Julie and the kids provide a great amount of balance and support, and I want to thank the staff as well. I think we're a great chemistry with one another, and they provide a lot of support for me and great job with the players. And most importantly, I want to thank the players. They've responded well. We've earned each other's respect, and allows us to go forward here and reach our ultimate goal. That's it.
Questions for either Bruce or Bruno? Was it an easy process for you, or how did it go?
Listen, I want to be. I think it's a good marriage. I think it's worked well for both sides. So for me, it's where I wanted to be. So it's easy in that regard. I had a representative do it, so you'd have to ask him if it was easy with Don, that part of it. I don't think we were. I don't think it was ever acrimonious. It was just, it took a little while to sort through some things, cross some I's, dot the T's, and off we went.
Feel good to get this done before camp?
I do, absolutely. For me, I guess I'm a little old school that way. I had another year in my deal, but if we were going to talk about extending it, I wanted to have it done so you have a bit of a clearer head going into the year. You're not worried about that stuff. You should be able to separate the two, but at the end of the day, I just felt it was important, and Donnie will speak to whether it was for him or not, but for me it certainly was. I wanted to focus on getting this team ready for Dallas, our first game, and getting back to have a successful season.
What are the challenges, Butch, of kind of keeping the message fresh as a coach in today's game?
Well, I think you grow with the game, so that's part of it. I think we've changed the way we've played a little bit each year. I think we're playing well, and we're playing to the Bruins standard of play, and we'll see how that plays out for us this year. Going forward, we feel we're going to have another strong team, but until the puck drops, how the message stays fresh. Sometimes you delegate a little bit more. I think when I first came in, obviously there was some newness, so I want to make sure the message was direct. I think working with Kevin and Joe and Jay now, they understand when we get together what needs to be said and how to filter it. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. I got a lot of trust in those guys to make sure. Veteran guys we have talked about a lot. I go through them a lot and allow them to police the room and kind of the message we want. If it gets skewed, then I have to step in and kind of take control there. So that's the way I've kind of done it. It's only been a few years. I imagine as this this term goes, we'll have to come up with some other things to keep their listening skills where they need to be. But I just think that honestly, Joe, it's a mutual respect. And once you start losing that, then you better reel it back in.
What do you see as your biggest challenge this year? Every year's got unique challenges. What do you see as your biggest one this year?
We're not integrating as many players as we have, so that shouldn't be. We've got a couple of new ones. We've got some young guys pushing. I think in the past there were more, I don't want to say openings, but there was we'd left some. This year I think it's going to be more of a challenge for those younger guys, so to get them to understand that and push for those spots, because you always want that internal competition, whether they can crack the lineup in October or November. We want to make sure, like one of the biggest reasons we had success last year was a credit to Donnie and the organization, is this depth we had. When a player went down, we had someone to come in and could play. Certainly we had to coach him up. They had to get out there and do it, but we used a lot of different players that came in and helped us win. So there'll be a little less of that, but there is still that next wave of new guys that we're going to have to make sure they understand that part of it. The next part of the challenge is just getting back up and running. I mean, it's been talked about, the teams that, to me, I think I said it the other day, one more day of talking about that, but I just feel like, listen, we got a bunch of great professionals in the room that are hockey players, and they're not going to be worried about what happened last year or what's going to happen next year. The focus is on now, and I think they'll be pretty good at that. So that'll be the challenge, but I believe with those guys in the group and the character they have, that we'll be able to get through that.
Bruce, in the player world, they're always looking at comps for their deals. Agents don't have arbitration rights, all of that. But do you do that? Do you look at Quenneville's deal? Do you look at Mike Sullivan, Trotz?
Quenneville's not a comparable. He's got 3 Stanley Cups. I got 0, so I don't think that. But we try to find guys. I think with only 30 other coaches, it gets a little tougher at times. I think if you're ever going to hit a snag, it's probably who is your comparable. Sometimes you got to go through that, find the right one. So I coaches absolutely do that. We try to, and then come out with the best one and see if it shakes out along those lines. There's just less of those deals to go by.
And in that world, where did you push yourself?
Most of the guys that were 3 to 4 or 5 years that I came in with was started. There was Peters and John Hines in Jersey, Blashill, Berube now has had similar. Coop's a little farther ahead. So there was 4 or 5 guys. I might be missing a couple. That you got to take out the young guys and then the old guys. Donnie might know the comparables better.
Knowing not.
I did have a representative, so I just got a phone call, and so I tried to, rehab my knee and not worry about it too much, and then go from there.
And who was that? The agent?
Francois Giguère,
Okay.
nice fella, lives out in Colorado. So.
And you had 1 year left, so obviously you came here from Providence, and so the 1 year left was from the deal you carried from Providence, or had you already done a deal?
No, we signed the one after the interim tag got taken off. We signed a new deal,
Okay.
so we just added on to that.
Bruce, when you were a player, I mean, were you guys as players aware of like coaches that like did this last year? I mean, did it really make a difference?
No, I was not. I wasn't up enough though to worry about that. Like I'm gonna outlast this guy. I was just trying to stay there. I think only the players would know that now if that becomes a factor for them. I don't know if that answers it, but I wasn't aware when I played. I know that. I just tried to play and get as much responsibility as you could.
I mean, sometimes even if you're a young guy, you're trying to break in. Other guys.
Well, Mike Keenan kept sending me down, so I was hoping his deal would be up, but I didn't. A lot of that stuff wasn't announced. Everything seems to be out there nowadays. So, but other than that, no.
You kind of touched on this, but there's this leadership core that you lean on that you profess your love for and everything. But as your deal goes on, those guys might not be around. What's your role in nurturing the next wave of leaders, or do you have to even do anything to do that?
Yeah, I think that's already started. I mean, we work with Charlie and Carlo and DeBrusque and Hein, and these are the younger guys that came up that we hope will grow into those roles. And I think, Matt, it's going to happen for some, and others are going to, they're not going to embrace that. I don't know if when Bergie walked in the door as an 18, 19-year-old, if everyone saw him as a leader, he'd be, and same with Z in Long Island, and et cetera, right? So some of that stuff just evolves, and some guys grasp it easier than others and kind of take charge. So we're trying to work with them, but I think that's down the road. I've never sat down with our young guy and talked to him about being a leader in this room. I think it's more about being a good follower, learn from the leaders, but that day will come. I don't know when, but I think our older guys have lots of good years left in them, but at some point that'll be, as a coach, one of your responsibilities, and as a GM and everybody in the organization, to try to find the next guy.
You talked about being, as a coach, maybe a little more patient at the start of games, but the team has really bought into the structure. How do you maybe find that balance between those two?
Well, I think the patient part sometimes is to do with how I've constructed the lines as well. If there's younger guys playing, we got to get up to speed in a hurry. That's what I said this year. There's a little bit less turnover, so maybe that'll just happen from guys playing together last year and being able to hit it off right away. I think some of it's just my style. That I think when you had asked me that, Joe, it's just one of those things that some players get turned off by it. They want. I believe every guy's gotten a lot of a chance here. Just might not be from shift to shift, but over time we let them play themselves out of their, whatever mistakes or lulls, whatever it may be. So I'd just like to see if I couldn't let some of that stuff play out a little longer in games, see how it plays out without risking, some of the things that I think we do well as a staff, which is make adjustments on the fly with personnel in line. So we've got to. I think it was your question how to balance it. I don't know. We're going to find out, I guess, down the road, because it's typically how I've always done it. Tried to be on top of a guy. If a guy's on, let's double shift him that night, get him some extra minutes. Might be expensive. Another guy, that's how you send a message, etc. I think it's just part of my style of how I like to get a team to play to its potential, but I'd also like to see a little more continuity at times as well.
Don, from a tactical perspective, what do you think are some of Bruce's strengths, some of the things that he's been able to do to maximize both individual and overall team performance?
Well, first off, I want to congratulate Bruce and be grateful for the support from the organization to to be able to pursue what we feel is the right decision for our hockey club. And as I said to Bruce, it's not about people deserving things. He's earned this right to lead this club, and that just doesn't start from 2 years ago. It starts from a number of years ago, where I got to know Bruce really well and working with him. And to me, those translates into a lot of the ideals that he has as a coach in an everyday approach. He's during the game a really good bench coach to know who's playing well, who's not. He's continues to evolve in terms of how quick to be on the trigger and move guys around versus have guys to have patience. He's got a good pulse of the room to allow his veterans to do what they do, but also govern what he needs to. Sets up the ideals of the hockey club each and every night, what the expectations are to start on time and have success that hold them to a standard each day. Can be very critical in the moment. And we've had this discussion in terms of how that's going to be received by players. But then the next day it turns right to a teaching opportunity and moving forward to prepare for the next day. And I think that's what players, can identify with, realizing their opportunity is still going to be there. So there are some coaches that have, longer term memories, and Bruce is almost the opposite, in trying to plan for what comes forward.
Coach, if you can think back after you left Washington and sort of those years in between then and Providence, what made you want to stay as a coach and pursue more coaching opportunities? And did you ever think you'd get this opportunity again?
Well, it's just a passion for the game. It's something I enjoyed doing, even though some stops worked out better than others. I think there was a time I wondered, well, maybe scouting, maybe management, maybe something in that role, as long as it was within the game. But I think, as soon as you go upstairs and you're on a higher level and you're not right in the heat of the battle, you realize, maybe that's not for me. I'd rather be back in it. So you try to formulate a plan or that help you get there. For me, that plan was going to Providence as an assistant coach, and with a great organization, getting your foot back in the door, get back at it. So as for getting a second chance, you never know. I always hoped I'd get one. I think every coach would tell you that. The first one that doesn't work out, they'd like to learn from their mistakes and get another kick at the cat. I did. Thankful for it, and it's worked out well so far.
You always said that one of the things you learned from that time in Washington was relationships with the players. Are there certain players, I guess, since you got back in, that have made that easier for you?
Well, I've said all along, I think I'm not in every locker room, but I got to believe we have the best veteran group in the league in terms of being able to sit down and talk about hockey and having an opportunity to earn their respect and vice versa. In Washington, I was a different person I was now. So, like I said, learn some stuff along the way. Maybe some of the players are different than the guys in the room here. There's a lot of different things that go into it. I don't want to rehash everything. At the end of the day, like I said, I think I've just become a better communicator, getting your message out there, and that's probably been the biggest difference from now and then for me personally.
Now that Coach is all set, any update on Carl or Paco?
Still works in progress. Continue to communicate every day, and hopeful that we can find the right landing spot for both players. Obviously, they're important to our hockey club, and we're going to keep working at it.
Don, somewhat in that vein, you were clear the other day about not wanting to do a deal where they would reach free agency. In a year, Bruce would have reached free agency. You draw a comparison there in terms of wanting to get ahead on your business that way?
Yes and no. Certainly from players and standpoints, what they have for rights, and Bruce would have been no different in that regard. To me, it's really where the relationship is at. I didn't have a timeline because I felt good in where we were headed as a hockey club with him in charge of that, and we were going to find the right spot moving forward. So from a leverage standpoint, I didn't really have the same. It doesn't really draw the same parallel, and it was mutual in that regard. So, to answer Butch's question, no, it wasn't acrimonious in any way, shape, or form. Very respectful conversations, finding the common ground, finding the common groups that, with the success that he's had, and coming to a really good point. Feeling where he's comfortable and we're comfortable, and that's really the extension of a good deal. Does anybody always feel like you could have had more or given up less? I don't know, but the end of the day, the resolution is where it should be, and we're happy about that.
Do you think, this is for both of you, that in terms of how a team plays, what you want to get done, that philosophy evolves between the two of you, or did you have separate ideas maybe? I mean, where you are today, do you think you were there 3 years ago in terms of how a team plays, how it...
Well, rolling back a number of years ago, I don't know if either one of us thought we'd be working together, working for this club. We were working then, and we had a good relationship. We shared, similar ideals. We had disagreements, and those are all healthy things. And I don't think that's been any different here. We don't agree on absolutely everything. He knows he gets to set a lineup and do what he wants to do that night, and we talk about it. It'll never be questioned in that regard. After the fact, we have to analyze some stuff and see what we might be able to do better. That's what we do every day, to try and get better, and that's his approach. So for me, those things work really well together. So we don't really question a lot of the things that we're trying to do. We lay out a path, we try and stick to it. When the twists and turns come, we adjust.
You feel the same?
Yeah, I think we've had good discussions on the way the league's gone and how teams had to adapt to the pace of play, the rule changes. We started those discussions in Providence. And I think it's a little different down there. You kind of hear the players, get them going and teach them how to be good pros and how to play the Bruins way. You get to this level, you get to, I think when we talk about it, pick your groceries a little bit, more specific. And I think we've done a good job. We're on the same page there with how we want to play and be successful. I think I just said it earlier, without the depth last year that we had, I don't think we have the same amount of wins as we typically would. I thought that had a lot to do with some of the kids coming in there. You can go through 15 of them at least. They came up probably, maybe 10 that came up and played really well for us. And Donnie had a big hand in finding some of his staff, finding those players that come in and help us play the way we want, from Nordstrom to Clifton to Wagner. There's a lot of kind of depth pieces that came in. Kuhlman's another example, did a really nice job for us, that we didn't know a lot about maybe coming in. So credit, I think that has something to do with us having a conversation. He getting the message, hey, this is the type of players where Bruce feels that will be successful in this team, and that Donnie agrees with, and off they go.
So to spin off what I asked Bruce earlier, you played for a number of coaches, in your career here. I mean, can that kind of thing, a coach, lame duck, for lack of a better term, I mean, can that, impact room, or can that have some effect?
You're right, I played for 8. One similar one that probably didn't like either one of us by the sounds of it. But I don't really think the players have that mindset. It's only when there starts to be a little pulse, and whether or not somebody's sort of poking things at things or pulling away from the fabric, because coaches go in with the same intent to win. I think Pat Burns was probably my reference point to what your question you're asking was. There started to be rumblings, and all of a sudden that's when whether or not a coach's authority is being questioned in those situations arise. That would be the only time, entering a year, it's not about the lame duck situation. It's really not. Some people look at a contract and it's a great platform. So why is it any different necessary for coaches, especially when the team has success? When you have a good club, you almost feel empowered in that regard. So every situation is different. I don't think it aligns the same way with players, the way they look at it. It's when things go sideways that comes up.
Tony, you can think back to when you brought Bruce in as the coach and replaced Claude with him. Obviously came in under a lot of scrutiny there. What do you remember most that impressed you about the way he handled that specific time period?
Well, I know I apologized on the day because it was obviously the timing was not to what anybody's ideals, nor was it mine. I do stand by the fact that I've known Bruce for a long time, and I did believe at the time when I made it a very difficult decision, the direction change of the organization, that he would take those 2 days and apply them very well for practice time. That was really when I had finally made the decision, and I'm not going to look and change upon that. I just know him as a coach and what he would want to try to do, and it would give him a benefit, and that's how I looked at it. So going forward, I don't try to change that. I look at the collaborative effort. There are decision makers, but everybody gets to impact the decision and how we go about it, and just try every day, and that works all the way through the staff. Everybody knows they can express their opinion freely, and try and take the collaborative approach. At the end of the day, there are people that make the decision. He knows his lineup; he gets to make a decision. We go from there.
Bruce, just your take on that situation when you came in and how you got through it.
Well, I remember it was a snowstorm. We looked like we weren't even going to play against San Jose, so it could have been a different start, but we got a break there. The hockey gods were looking down on us. We had a good weekend, played well, and off we went. So I just looked at it as an opportunity. You asked about earlier if you get a second chance. I've talked to coaches at the odd place here. When one comes, just be ready for it. And I will say this, I thought I was prepared to lead the group and sort of implement some ideas quickly. You know, like I said, I think those two practices are important. Changed a few things, how we're going to play and attack, a little more up-tempo. Those 2 days allowed us to sort of start that process, and it rolled into that, you know, that week and weekend. And then, you know, all of a sudden you have a little success. You know, players, they want to have success, so they bought in. So we earned their trust right away and kind of built off it from there, and we're going to continue to try to do that this year again. I think Steve asked the challenge, you know, again, how to be successful. Last year I thought we did a lot of things well. You know, didn't quite get to our ultimate goal, so you got to earn their trust again that we're going to be able to get there this year with you know, not your typical amount of rest.
You talked about the leadership role before. How professional were they, and also receptive, and I guess offering to kind of get you through that transition?
Z and Bergie were the first two I talked to. Terrific. You know, I remember to this day, Bergie said, "Listen, you're my coach. Whatever you need, I'll do." So I thought that was, you know, for, you know, a guy in my position that, you know, hey, when you got right away, it's like, okay, let's go. Make sure you're ready and direct and assertive in your approach, and we were. I got to thank Joe Sacco. You know, he did a great job for us then. Obviously, had been here a little longer than I had, so he, you know, his feedback was very important. And you know, Jay was a little bit younger, so but both of them were right there, and off we went. So those guys had a lot to do with it as well, right away.
So Bruce, you've talked about the evolution of both your players. You also look at the way the league is moving. So this year, are there areas tactically, personnel-wise, that you look at and say, okay, we've got to keep an eye on this, or this is an area I'd like to improve or adjust or evolve to keep up with how you...
Well, one of the biggest changes tactically will be the coach's challenge now, right? They've changed that a little bit, so we're going to have to be on our toes there, and when we challenge, when we don't, because it can impact games. But as for the player personnel, St. Louis wins, so does the pendulum swing back to the bigger, heavier teams now? You know, we've had that conversation. We'd like to think we're a good balance. So will that affect how we structure our lineup? And I guess we'll see how the games play out. We always feel we could play that style of game, but also be up-tempo and use our skills. So, you know, we looked at that. We've added a Brett Ritchie who's a bigger body. You know, does he push a smaller guy out of the lineup? Does that make us better? So I think some of that plays itself out as the season goes along. I still think there'll be both schools of thought, just like there was for the last 4 or 5 years, speed versus brawn, and you know, may the best style win. I think it's gone both ways.
Don, from a larger picture, do you try to sync up the assistants now on the same length of term?
Are you telling me you're negotiating for them as well? Again, we've had some continuity for our staff, and I'd like to continue to do so. Bruce and I have had some discussions, you know, but you know, that's what my intention would be. We'll see whether or not it goes as smoothly as what I would like. Not all of them do, obviously. So it's, you know, but that would be our intention.
If you started that process?
With them individually?
Yeah.
No, not individually.
Let's take 2 more questions.
Now, can you elaborate a little bit on Patrice's situation? And, you know, it's not, I think, gone away at this point and so close to the season. And was surgery ever an option, or how much do you see it affecting him going forward?
Well, obviously the medical staff will have to speak to that, and Bergie himself. It's lingered. He had a procedure a while back that would, you know, likely have alleviated, but it's, you know, it's a mileage issue as well. So, you know, we have to manage that effectively and communicate effectively as to where he's at and how he physically feels. You know, we don't anticipate it, but you know, you have to be realistic that it's still there. So, and he's working through it. You know, but we're doing it in a smart manner, and obviously he wouldn't be out on the ice today if you know, we didn't feel he was heading in the right direction. But it'd be a workload issue of, you know, how we do those things through camp so that he gets the proper time to make sure he's where he needs to be. But I don't think we're overly concerned about it at this point, but you know, it's a bit of a thing that's lingered.
Anything changed in the last 48 hours from the rookie camp? Just trying to get updated here. Hughes was headed to some surgery for his mouth. So.
Yeah, he's got extensive damage that he needs to follow up on, so he won't be on the ice to start camp as well. He got a significant injury there, so we may have to make sure that he's healthy and beyond that. Trent was on today, so we're going day by day with him. And same thing with Grizzlick was on today. He's had a bit of a off-season thing, but looks like he'll be fine too for camp. But we've talked about monitoring all of our guys that, obviously we had a hell of a run, so, we need to be cognizant of that. And again, it's a great opportunity for other players to realize that those are minutes that are going to get spread around accordingly and to step forward, because the competition internally, it should be really good.
You said the one PTO.
Yes.
Is that
Thanks.
They're requesting one-on-ones, we'll do those in the hallway, and then the folks that are waiting on